from the Hudson Media Group studio. This is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier journalist and the sworn enemy of all the toxic progressives, social justice clowns, and the woke fools throughout the state of New Jersey. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Happy December to you all. As always, there's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just sort of remind you all that the liberal media here in the Garden State is pretty useless. And I'll name a few culprits in a moment, but you know what? It's sort of centered around the idea that the liberal media is very convenient in what it likes to cover or what it likes to be outraged about. And here's a story that really resonates with me because Rutgers University is my alma mater. And as an alumnus, I'm pretty disgusted with one of their employees, and more so because our tax dollars pay her salary. Now, I'm sure you've been seeing on your news feeds, but a faculty member at Rutgers University teaching what else? Women's studies. I mean, talk about one of the more useless majors in all of higher education. But let me not go there. But apparently, Professor Crunk, as she's known on social media, Brittany Cooper, recently said in an interview, quote, "White people are committed to being villains, and as such, quote, we got to take these mother effers out." So, of course, later in the week, the Rutgers branch of the American Association of University Professors said in a statement that after Cooper had been subjected, oh, poor Brittany, to a, quote, renewed wave of racist attacks for her public scholarship. Folks, there's no scholarship about what she said. It's just another liberal organization covering for one of its own. Now, they said this week, we wish to express our unequivocal solidarity with Dr. Cooper. We affirm our support for her academic freedom and decry the harassment and intimidation she now faces, including threats of physical violence fueled by a media smear campaign. The AAUP characterized Cooper's recent remarks as, quote, bad faith media disinformation campaign that grossly misrepresented the communication of her research findings and falsely accused her of promoting violence. Folks, no. If you watch it in its context and you look at her social media, Brittany Cooper is a pretty vile, disgusting woman. And of course, you know, having tenure at any university in the country will get you immunity from any sort of persecution and or accountability. Because let's be honest, folks, if I were to say anything about black people or Asian people to this extent, guess what? I will be relegated to driving Uber and or Lyfts for the rest of my adult life. But of course, when you work in academia, you can get away with saying something as blasphemous and as outrageous as this. Now, of course, I'm disgusted with Rutgers University continuing to employ a woman like this, but once again, once you're tenured, you're pretty much, again, immune and bulletproof. But that's not really my issue. I'm mad at that. What I'm more angry about is sort of the useless liberal media here in the state of New Jersey. And let's start off with, of course, Uncle Dave himself, David Cruz from NJTV and also NJ Spotlight News. Now, this is a guy, ladies and gentlemen, who, when you browse his social media, if he's not, I don't know, salivating about his New York Mets, and Dave, by the way, you can spend all the money you want, you're never going to win a World Series anytime soon. So let's get that out of the way. Okay? But let me just say this. When you look at his social media or you look at his interviews, right? Recently, he interviewed State Senator Michael Testa, and as regards to a bill that he co-sponsored along with another state senator out in Morris County, Joe Panaccio. And of course, they are vocal critics of critical race theory, and rightfully so. It's a toxic sort of curriculum in its form. Now, I understand that CRT is not taught in public schools. It's only taught in law schools, graduate schools, and in undergraduate education. But folks, you know, we all know that curriculum can be manipulated at any time, and we all know that unions like the NJEA and the AFT can sort of camouflage it by calling it something else and sort of encouraging this sort of curriculum. Now, I'm a vocal opponent of CRT, but that's not what this monologue's about. It's about the fact that someone like Uncle Dave would, I don't know, interview, again, a state senator from South Jersey and Michael Testa, and sort of take him to task on why he's, you know, co-sponsoring a bill like this, and sort of, you know, kind of vilifying him a little bit during the interview. I mean, you can Google it and watch it for yourself. But you know what? Do you think that at any point Uncle Dave would want to talk about this story at Rutgers University? Again, folks, it's the State University of New Jersey. Our tax dollars pay these faculty members. And do you think that at any point in time Uncle Dave would maybe, I don't know, have the integrity to want to interview her and maybe hold her accountable for vile comments. But no, he'd rather go and try to persecute State Senator Michael Testa and State Senator Joe Panaccio in either his monologues or on his Twitter feed. Now, of course, he did print a retraction, about how he felt that maybe he unfairly was misrepresenting State Senator Testa's platform when it comes to passing a bill to ban CRT here in New Jersey, especially in our public schools. But folks, nobody reads a retraction. Everybody sort of looks at the initial response. And that's the problem, folks. These are the stories that the liberal media here in New Jersey should be covering. Now, Uncle Dave is not the only guilty party here. Now, I might get in trouble for saying this, but you know what? I don't really care because I know I'm right on this. But other media institutions such as Insider NJ, who I work for, by the way, are just as guilty too. You have its editor-in-chief, the insufferable Maxie Pizarro, another guy who's just as useless as Uncle Dave, right? Who will write about a plethora of other things and really, not have much substance behind them. Folks, if you ever need a cure to insomnia, forget about taking melatonin or any other over-the-counter medication you want to buy at a local CVS or Walgreens. Folks, just watch Uncle Dave in his interviews, and that'll put you to sleep. I know it does for me, all right? You ever need a cure for insomnia? Read Maxie Pizarro's columns on Insider NJ or watch some of his video interviews. My God, they will just knock you out. You'll sleep like a baby, trust me. Or even others at Insider NJ, like little J.J. Lassiter, another insufferable leftist who, picks and chooses what he wants to be outraged about. But this is something, for someone who's vilifying white people like Brittany Cooper is, you would think that guys like Maxie Pizarro and Jay Lassiter would be up in arms and trying to hold her accountable and cover a story like this. No, but that's too much, that requires too much integrity for Uncle Dave and Maxie and little JJ. And again, I know that to them, integrity is just a word in the dictionary. And, they might struggle with having it. I know I don't. Now, I know that sounds sanctimonious. Yeah, you know what? It sounds arrogant. And maybe it is. Maybe it sounds smug. Perhaps. Maybe it's, conceited. Maybe. But you know what? It's also true. And that's the thing about the liberal media in New Jersey, folks. People like Maxie Pizarro, people like Uncle Dave Cruz, and also little J.J. Lassiter. And don't get me wrong, there are other guilty parties. We have, Tommy Boy, Tom Moran with the Star Ledger, and other culprits throughout the state of New Jersey that like to cherry pick what they want to be outraged about. And again, this is why people don't trust the liberal media. Never mind nationally, right? But here in New Jersey, and especially with these institutions that are supposed to be, objective, that are supposed to be neutral, that are supposed to... Folks, my specificity is opinion journalism. I don't make any apologies about the fact that I'm a conservative, but I'm not a print columnist. I'm not a journalist in the traditional sense. The aforementioned Three Stooges I just discussed, they're supposed to be, and they're not. And that's what's really alarming, folks. So, you know what? It's not so much, again, the Brittany Cooper story, which, again, is outrageous on its value when you look at it in its totality. But what's even more egregious and outrageous is the fact that these guys who have been supposedly pillars in the New Jersey media apparatus for so long refuse to cover stories like this. You know what? Again, it requires having integrity. And we all know the Three Stooges I just mentioned don't know what that is. Folks, I would never claim to be God's gift to journalism. But you know what? I'm pretty close. And the other guys, yeah, not so much. I'll let you decide. But folks, do some research, read up on this, and you'll know I'm absolutely correct in every single thing I just said, which is usually the norm here on this show. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. On this week's edition of the 5-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson, was Jersey City Ward F Councilman-elect Frank Gilmore. We spoke for over an hour on a plethora of different issues, and here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we talked about what he's looking forward to addressing in Ward F once he takes office in January. Let's hear what he had to say.
And it was impressive because you weren't working with the sort of same, financial capital, as they say, when it comes to fundraising. And that's always tough for a candidate that's trying to beat an incumbent, especially an incumbent that we all know had enormous resources behind them, not just monetarily, but also sort of, the political machine. I don't mean, in the sense of like the device. It's more of the the organization that Stephen Fulop has been able to amass for some time now. So, it was interesting because I remember looking at the results on election night, and of course, there was a lot of drama because at the state level you had the gubernatorial race, which was really, really interesting and exciting to see the results. Yeah. And at the same time, you had statewide legislative seats. But in Jersey City, a lot of people looked at your race as sort of the blueprint for future grassroots candidates to say, you know what, I can beat an incumbent if I go about this in a smart and resourceful way. And I think, again, I got to give you a lot of credit, bro, because, you were behind the eight ball like a lot of candidates can be when you're running in a three-man race. And I'm not saying that to be insulting. That's just the truth. That's just the way that's the optic, bro.
It's hard in itself to win when you're going against a lot of financial power, right? So we knew that we weren't going to be able to match anyone on a level that the other opponents were on. Both of the other two opponents was able to take out several mailers, right? Each mailer is upwards of $20,000-$25,000. What we did, we leveled the playing field, right? So we know that we can't outspend you, but what we can do is level the playing field and talk about the issues. Then you leverage your social media platform. And a lot of people were saying, well, Frank, yeah, you have a lot of views and you have a lot of followers on social media, but those people don't vote. I mean, that's not spam. Like, those are real people. So when you see me doing a video or you see my podcast and you see 5,000 views, 6,000 views, some videos getting 12,000 views, like, those are real people. Right? And people, for whatever reason, they just underestimated the fact that social media is very influential in today's climate. Right? So we knew our strong points. We knew what we were deficient at. And we just executed on our strong points. And for me, I just wanted to make sure that I was articulating a message that resonated with the majority of the constituents of Ward F, because we all felt like we wanted to move the ward in a different direction. We all felt like, we needed new leadership. But a lot of times when you're taking on these endeavors, people's like, all right, well, we need new leadership, but what does that new leadership look like? So with our campaign, it was very inclusive of the entire ward. And that's why I said from the beginning, this is about the people's. This is the people's Ward F. It's not about Frank Gilmore, right? It's about the people of Ward F. And how can we galvanize the people and represent the people? And that's what it was about. And that's why we were victorious, because it was all of the opinions and expertise of the people within a ward.
Secondly, we discussed what type of progressive he is, because he did run as an independent. And as we all know that locally, especially in Jersey City, progressive heroes like James Solomon, of course, is the social justice warrior that everybody wants in government. But, I wanted to ask Frank exactly, how does he identify when we all know that sometimes progressives, more times than not, tend to be pretty toxic with their fixation on wokeness or bathrooms, or reminding us that they failed high school biology by thinking there's more than two genders, or, I don't know, this obsession with political correctness and other woke nonsense that we know kind of permeates among progressives. I asked Frank what he thought about it.
And I know that for your constituents now, that's a breath of fresh air to hear that there's going to be a smooth transition and that you're already rolling up your sleeves and eager to get to work. So that's really uplifting. And, as someone who, called the race for you and was supportive. Now, again, I know that along some policy lines, we don't see eye to eye, and that's fine, but we're adults. We can have a civil dialogue about it. And that's what I want to do tonight, because, Frank, one of the things I'm consistent of on this program is, you can have your political beliefs. You can lean however you want. But I'm always of the practice that at the local level, because we see this in other parts of the city, right? And again, and I'm not trying to be combative, in general, but in other parts of the city, like in Ward E, someone like James Solomon, who won convincingly, he's a really progressive guy. He's very woke. He's all into that. At times, I call woke nonsense and some of that hysteria. But, he's a guy that it seems like he's trying to be like the next AOC or this progressive hero in Jersey. And that might not translate well to the entire city. And I know that you identify as a progressive, but Frank, at the end of the day, man, I think people are very simple. I think people care about their garbage getting picked up, with the winter coming up now, that the snow gets shoveled promptly, and that, the streets aren't, inundated in snow, and that services are available to residents, and that their council person is there legislating for them, not trying to be this, activist, this progressive AOC or, Ilhan Omar or all those other woke people. Like, I don't think, Frank, at the end of the day, that's what people care about. The idea that, people think, oh, well, with James Solomon's win as a progressive, that's exactly what Jersey is going to become. I know you're a progressive, Frank, but I don't think you're this crazy woke leftist like I see the way I see progressives being lately. Is that fair to say?
I guess your definitions will differ, but I will say that I would make the argument that our constituents do care more about do care more than just about the issues that you brought forward. I think constituents wants to see those elected officials be more cognizant and conscientious of social justice issues and, moving along the progressive platform or the progressive ideology. I think a lot of times in politics, people tend to do things, and the only rationale for doing things is because it's been done a certain way for a long time. I think it is very telling when any elected official can galvanize a great percentage of the voters that came out. So I think that's huge. That can't be ignored. And for me and for the constituency in Ward F, I think that our constituents, they appreciate that. They appreciate that. A lot of people are more socially conscious now, more so than ever.
It was definitely an informative interview with Jersey City Ward F Councilman-elect Frank Gilmore, and you can listen to it in its entirety, once again, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingtohudson. These exclusives I'll continue to bring you every single week on Blog Talk Radio. Here are some local stories for your consideration. And let's start off in the Mile Square city of Hoboken, folks, where, if you ever need a good laugh, you can always rely on the Hoboken Democrats, specifically their Instagram page, to give you a chuckle. So I happened to see it on my newsfeed this week where they decided to, repost an Instagram photo from the sort of insufferable left-wing organization MoveOn.org. And this was really funny. It says, quote, 0 House Republicans voted for universal pre-K in the Build Back Better Act. Well, folks, let me just say this about the Hoboken Democrats, whether it's Rachel Hodis or the insufferable Phil Cohen, who, let's be honest again, folks, if it wasn't for Peter Cunningham listening to his wife and deciding not to run again, Phil Cohen wouldn't even sniff City Hall. He could maybe sniff it by walking by, but he wouldn't even sniff the council chambers. But let me not digress here. Folks, it's interesting when I see local organizations like this that are headed up by Rachel Hodes, and again, sort of, led by the first vice chair, Phil Cohen, who, just look at that face. Have you ever seen a more insufferable looking human than Phil Cohen? Or Eileen, Caravallo, who, again, folks, sort of, think it's okay to post stuff like this where we all know that it's kind of just disingenuous, where, this is sort of the bread and butter of many Democrats, right? Oh, well, there should be free this or free that or universal this, universal that. Yeah, folks, it's all paid by taxpayers. And here's a newsflash for Rachel and Phil and anybody else in the Hoboken Democrats. If you can't afford children, newsflash, don't have any. The idea that, government should be taking care of us and our kids. No, that's not the case. And I get it. Leftists like yourselves think that that's government's job, right? To, be involved in every aspect of our existence. That's not me, folks. And I'm not saying that I have every answer policy-wise, but this isn't one of them. But again, of course, folks, this is the sort of intellectually bankrupt, platform that we've come to know when it comes to Sleepy Joe and his administration in Washington. Let's have universal this, universal that. Oh, folks, there's no such thing as free or universal. It's paid for somehow, and it's paid with taxpayer dollars. So again, here's a news flash to the Hoboken Democrats. Stop posting idiotic things like this on Instagram when we all know that, folks, at the end of the day, people should be responsible. Okay, you want to have children? God bless you. All right, I'm looking forward to having kids. But you know what? If I can't afford them, I won't have them. But that's too much to think about. That requires too much critical thinking for people like the Hoboken Democrats when they post stupidity like this from, of all organizations, MoveOn.org. Folks, you ever check out their social media? They are insufferable leftists. But again, there's a certain audience and demographic that the Hoboken Democrats cater to. And of course, Rachel Hodes is doing a very good job, and so's Phil Cohen. But folks, when you think about it, I'm right on this. And now let's go to Jersey City. And once again, a thank you to John Highness with his report in the Hudson County View. Now, apparently the Jersey City Board of Education has approved a deal with the Jersey City Education Association to increase the minimum salary for teachers to $61,000. Now it's going from $54,740 to $61,000 for candidates with bachelor's degrees, which I would think that that's sort of the minimum anyway, because you need that to be able to teach along with certain certifications. Now, according to the Board of Education President, Musab Ali, a statement released this week said, quote, "At a time when districts across the country are facing a teacher shortage, I am proud that Jersey City has taken a dramatic step to show our staff members that they are valued by providing them with a decent wage. We want to make Jersey City Public Schools a model to attract and retain top talent in education." Now, additionally, teacher salaries across the range itself received a minimum salary increase of at least $500. This investment was made possible after the board approved the first fully funded $814 million budget in 13 years this past May. Again, according to JCEA President Ron Greco, quote, "In a collaborative effort by the board, the superintendent, and the union, we were able to make an adjustment to the salary guide in an effort to recruit and to retain teachers in the midst of a national teacher shortage." Folks, bravo here. As an educator working in academia, I have lots of friends that are high school teachers, elementary school teachers, whether it be middle school or whatever it is, whatever level it is. Folks, this is just great to hear. And I'm hoping that other school districts, again, without sort of suffocating taxpayers too much, will follow this model, because teachers are an immense and important part of our development as early as pre-K, going to kindergarten, in our formative cognitive years. I remember every single great teacher I ever had, and I be honest with you, I don't even have enough fingers and toes to count them all. But I know the difference that they made in my life in making me, again, New Jersey's premier journalist, an outstanding educator, and of course, a wonderful philanthropist. But more so, folks, the impact that teachers have on our lives cannot be overstated. It's important to hire good people and to keep good people. And you know what? Bravo to the Jersey City School District and also the Jersey City Education Association for making this possible. Staying in Jersey City, I saw an editorial that caught my attention, once again published in the Hudson County View, and thank you, John Highness, for reporting on this. So apparently in a letter to the editor last week, Jersey City Ward C resident Kamala Jasmine Chopra Patel, Jesus Christ, honey, could you have more names? Says that recent council candidate Tom Zuppa, quote, sold us out by endorsing Councilman Richard Borgiano, and voters should still elect Kevin Bing coming up in the December 7th runoff. Quote, "I had supported Tom Zuppa to be our new councilman in Ward C. However, given the recent announcement that Tom Zuppa has endorsed Rich Borgiano, I feel that I've made a terrible mistake. I believe that I totally misjudged Tom Zuppa. Obviously, his campaign slogan of, quote, a new day for Ward C was meaningless election year rhetoric." Well, folks, you can read the editorial for yourself. And as far as I'm concerned, I think this is extremely misguided by Kamala. And, it's interesting because I happen to know Tom Zuppa. I know him personally. I've interviewed him multiple times, not just on Talkin' the Hudson, but also my Insider NJ podcast, Politically Direct. He's a gentleman. He's a former prosecutor. Now he works in the private sector. He's a very accomplished attorney. And at the same time, folks, he's a guy that ran a very good, hard-fought grassroots campaign. Yes, he came up short. He's not in the runoff coming up on December 7th, but it doesn't diminish the effort that he put into this campaign. Now, if he's looking between who's left here as the dust settles, well, folks, do you want to go with a progressive type of leftist like Kevin Bing? And by the way, folks, this might sound salty to some people, but it's not. I won't take Kevin Bing seriously if he doesn't want to talk to all journalists in Hudson County. By sort of, picking and choosing who you want to talk to or not want to answer tough questions, which he would have to on my podcast, which he's refused to appear on. Well, I don't know about you folks, but you know what? Unlike Tom Zupa, he's unwilling to do that. So when Tom Zupa made a decision on who to endorse, he could have sat this out. Now, whether that's being self-serving or politically expedient, I'll leave that up to you, ladies and gentlemen. But without question, Tom Zupa has every right to endorse whoever he wants, and he has every right to sit it out. He chose not to sit it out. He chose to go with Richard Boggiano. Now, before he decided to join the mayor's ticket, folks, he won 2 terms as an independent voice on the city council. When he ran alongside the late, great Michael Youn, they were the mavericks of the city council. They wanted to make sure that they kept the mayor accountable, and you know what? They voiced their opinions to represent their wards when they had to. You know what? I applaud Richard Boggiano for being that way. Now, again, some people might say that Richard Boggiano sold out by being on the mayor's ticket. Folks, again, I'm not saying this, and believe me, I'm not being an ageist when I say the following. Richard Boggiano is being smart. At his age, the less aggravation, the better. And if you can run on a campaign where he and the mayor can see eye to eye, for the most part, that's smart. That's not being self-serving. That's being politically astute. But for some people, you know what? They just want to call it cowardice. I don't call it cowardice. I call it calculating and being politically smart. I'll leave it up to you folks, but on December 7th, I'll say this. The smart choice in Jersey City in Ward C is Richard Boggiano, not the woke nonsense that Kevin Bing and James Solomon want to fixate on, when it comes to bathrooms and bike lanes and thinking we're going to be underwater because of climate hysteria and that Aquaman's going to be at my door. No, folks, all this woke leftist nonsense, that might, resonate well in downtown Jersey City with all the white woke people that are, too busy sipping on their cappuccinos. But for the rest of Jersey City, it remains to be seen if that's something that's pretty applicable to them and their thought process. We'll find out on December 7th, folks. But you know what? Richard Boggiano seems like the better choice in Ward C. And that's our show for this week. To check out all of the excellent programming brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, please check out their websites at www.hmgtvshows.com, as well as www.livestream.com/hmgtv, and also check out the Hudson Media Group on their YouTube page. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on both Instagram and Twitter. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, you can listen to the 5-time award-winning podcast, Talkin' the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/TalkinTheHudson. Exclusives this year have included council candidates Tom Zupa, HCDO chairwoman and also at-large councilwoman-elect Amy DeGise, as well as Jersey City Times publisher Aaron Morrill, Tap Into publisher Steve Lennox, as well as Tap Into Jersey City columnist Al Sullivan. You won't hear the exclusives anywhere else, folks, in Hudson County Media. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Professor Fernando Uribe, and also hit me up on Twitter as well at NoFilterUribe. Make sure you like Talking the Hudson on Facebook, as well as liking Talking Politics on Facebook as well. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier journalist and the sworn enemy of all the toxic progressives, social justice clowns, and all the woke fools in Hudson County and throughout the state of New Jersey. That's right. It's me, Fernando Uribe. As always, thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.